Time for the market report. Nothing too scary, to say the least.
That's right, Mike. No big moves last week, so we'll look into some other interesting news. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then, 2 USDA reports tell us about the current state of cattle and harvest. And finally, a deeper dive into pumpkins. What makes them so special, and what is their market impact? So, markets closed the week on the upswing for the most part. A few commodities down, but not by much. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, soybean oil up over 2.25 cents and over 5.5% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, wheat down 3.75 cents and over 0.5% decrease from the previous week. This week we have a special presenter to help us finish the market section, Farmweek's Bella Bingham. Bella?
Thanks, Zach. Last week, 2 USDA reports dropped, updating us on our current cattle on feed and crop harvest. Here's what they had to say.
Cattle and calves on feed for the slaughter market in the U.S., 11.6 million head, slightly below last year at this time. Steers and steer calves up 1%. Heifers and heifer calves also down slightly more than 1%. Placements in feedlots totaled 2.16 million head, 2% below last year. Net placements 2.10 million head. Marketings of fed cattle totaled 1.70 million head, 2% above last year. Other disappearance totaled 56,000 head, 2% below last year. In this month's crop progress report, corn harvest 81% complete, 13% higher than last year. Soybean harvest 89% complete, 7% higher than last year. And cotton harvest 52% complete, 5% higher than last year. Cotton condition appears 64% good to excellent.
Soon we'll meet the 2024 Tree Farmer of the Year. The business side of that industry is a big part of it, and managing the forest equally so. Here's Bracy Clark from Scotch Plywood Company with what he thinks all tree farmers need to keep in mind.
You know, the pulpwood price is the trickiest thing we deal with, not just us, throughout the entire state, you know. But the saw timber price is relatively steady. You know, chipping saw is relatively steady. And so if you get through the first thinning and treat that more as a silviculture practice versus income deal, if you're trying to grow saw timber to get to your money crop, then a first thinning has to be done, regardless of the price. Thinning is crucial, and we have started, like I said, to treat first thinnings like a silviculture practice, a forest management practice. Yes, you will get some money, not a lot of money, but a lot of landowners are starting to make mistakes, in my opinion, by letting their timber continue to just grow to 20, 25 years old, hoping they'll get a magic number that is probably never going to happen. I mean, once every few years the mills might run out, and yeah, you might get $15 a ton or whatever, but that's not reality.
This time of year, you can't escape them. Pumpkins. They're everywhere, and why not? But there's a lot more to them than meets the eye, and this week we take a deeper market dive into what makes them so special.
It's a symbol of the fall, seen everywhere during this season, the pumpkin. It's used for decoration and food. But what exactly makes this gourd so special? And how do we come across so many this time of year? Historically, the pumpkin was cultivated by Native Americans alongside corn and beans. This trifecta of crops tended to work well together. And the meat of the pumpkin, that is, the inner flesh we make pies and other foodstuffs out of, was found to be a nutritious means to survive the colder winter months. Planting pumpkins can occur either in the spring with summer squash, melons, and cucumbers, or they can be planted in early summer, which is the case with pumpkins used primarily as jack-o'-lanterns. They grow similarly to squash, their cousin, and can cross-pollinate with it and other gourd types. Illinois is the #1 pumpkin growing state, by far, growing nearly twice as much as any other state. And the village of Morton, Illinois, calls itself the pumpkin capital of the world. It's also home to Libby's, the best-known pumpkin puree in the grocery store. Market-wise, the pumpkin is considered seasonal, which means that it's not normally measured in year-round sales. 90% of pumpkin-based products are sold from October to January. In 2023, the top 6 pumpkin-producing states harvested more than 1.2 billion pounds of pumpkins. Pumpkin prices, tend to vary by state, with Illinois generally having the lowest price. This is due to their pumpkins mainly being grown for processing and not for decoration. In the weeks leading up to Halloween of this year, average wholesale pumpkin prices ranged from $157.50 per 36-inch bin for Howden pumpkins, the variety most commonly used to make jack-o'-lanterns, to $212.50 per 24-inch bin for pie pumpkins, and up to $350 for specialty varieties like mixed heirloom pumpkins. In the third week of October this year, the average retail price per Howden pumpkin was $6.21.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Hopefully we won't have any big shocks coming our way.